Conspiracy heresy. Conspiracy theories are a tool that can either free or enslave the fool. My fellow fools, I welcome you all to this brief stop along your fool's journey. I hope you find value in the perspective that I offer you today. Thank you for your care and attention. I am John Roeland, doing business as John Roeland Wydogan. I am a sociologist, writer, poet, rapper, musician, and podcaster. In 2020, I started an organization called Natural Freedom League. The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government. You can find our work at naturalfreedomleague.com. Conspiracy heresy. This presentation is a personal reflection of my understanding of what conspiracy theories are, where they come from, and how they affect us both positively and negatively. After a lifetime of recognizing that something is wrong with the mainstream narrative, questioning authority, and seeking truth about what is going on in the world, I feel confident that I can offer a nuanced approach to understanding conspiracies. I intend to help people to understand the different perspectives of observing the world and historical and current events. I also intend to help folks to climb out of the rabbit holes that we can easily get stuck in and raise our consciousness up to the root cause of the problems that we face as a collective. My goal is to help people rediscover their imagination, inspiration, and intuition. I am proud to be a conspiracy theorist, and you should be too. There are a couple of memories as a child that, looking back, foreshadowed my skepticism of authority and my future as a conspiracy theorist. At a very young age, I remember knowing I never wanted to be in the military, and I had an issue with war. I also remember at a very young age, while walking to school, having what I would call a Truman Show complex, where I thought that I was somehow special and that all the people around me knew that I was here for some reason. And like when someone would drive by in the car, I would like look to see if they were looking at me. Just goes to show you a child's imagination is pretty intense. And I remember when Truman Show came out, I thought, hey, that was the little psychosis I had when I was a kid. Also, my experience with religion, specifically Christianity, growing up in America. I was baptized Catholic, went to a Catholic church until my parents moved us over to a Nazarene church, which is much more casual, not as much sitting and standing and crossing yourselves and rituals. But I do remember going to church camp and the theme of Armageddon being taught, and the theme of the end of the world, which obviously exists in the Bible in Revelations. I remember reconciling the patriotism that people showed in America and in the town I grew up in, and reconciling that patriotism with Christianity. And I always had an understanding that we were the evil empire that was talked about in the story of Armageddon. When I was about 17 years old, 18 years old, I remember losing my religion, starting to question religion. I remember specifically having a friend in high school who was Muslim, and she was telling me that her religion was the correct religion. And I remember thinking, I don't believe in a God that would punish somebody based on where they grew up or what their cultural upbringing was. And so what I did take from Christianity was a unique perspective, I felt like at the time, was Jesus as an example to live by. And I always had the sense that I could heal myself and I could heal others. And I didn't think of this in a egotistical way. I thought of it in a way that everybody could heal. Definitely a positive egotistical way, a strong ego, not an imbalanced ego. My perspective on this approach comes from one quote from the Bible, or verse, I should say, John 14:12. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. My perspective on losing my religion and leaving Christianity and exploring other belief systems is that you don't throw the baby Jesus out with the holy bathwater. Basically meaning to take the positive from any doctrine or philosophy and leave the negative, but don't be afraid to explore different doctrines and philosophies. Another thing I remember that kind of foreshadowed my conspiratorial thinking is noticing synchronicities in high school, which my friends and I called the omens. I didn't know the word synchronicity back then, I don't think, or at least we didn't use it as much. But when little things would happen that connected, you know, we would look at each other and like, oh, that's the omens, you know. And that was definitely connected to our exploring with smoking marijuana and other experimental drugs as well, specifically psychedelics. After high school, I began researching world religion and spirituality on my own. I did explore some New Age concepts, and one that I remember was a book called The Celestine Prophecy. And one aspect of that that really stood out to me was the idea that coincidences happen for a reason. You know, that when a coincidence happened, you shouldn't just think, oh, wow, that's a coincidence. You should actually look into why this is happening. And it perhaps is the universe trying to speak to you, or, you know, the spirit realm trying to speak to you. Coincidence, coincidence, two incidents, two correlating incidents. When you look in the dictionary, of course, the first definition is the modern connotation of it, not what the actual word means. A remarkable concurrence of events or circumstances without apparent causal connection. Without apparent causal connection. They have to put that in there, right? We are in the Western rational way of thinking. There's no way there could be a causal connection to this coincidence. Two, correspondence in nature or in time of occurrence. So again, it's just two corresponding incidences. JFK, MLK, Malcolm X, and RFK. I remember wanting to be successful, quote unquote, famous, so that I could have a voice like someone like MLK. I wanted to fix the world's problems. I had a sense of wanting to help in that way. And I was a big fan of Michael Jordan's. I played basketball, and I always thought, man, if you had the power of Michael Jordan and you had the inspiration of Martin Luther King, like how much could you change the world? You know, you could make such a difference in the world. But I knew that before I could find the solution to the world's problems, I had to discover what the problem was. And this led me on my journey of self-discovery, spirituality, history, and inevitably conspiracy theories. Specifically, JFK stands out. Obviously, the assassination of JFK is almost the beginning of the modern conspiracy theorist movement, if you could say. I remember my mom describing it as Camelot, and I remember my mother having a very fond and sort of glamorized outlook, memory of the Kennedys. And when I, saw movies like JFK, and I intuitively understood that something was wrong with the mainstream story, I remember asking my mom, why didn't she care more about what really happened to JFK? And I remember my mother saying, well, what can I do about it? And when I would ask my dad similar questions, my dad would always answer me by saying, the government isn't that organized. To which in my mind, I always thought, well, that's what they want you to think. The definition of conspire. The original definition of the word conspire is to work together or to breathe together toward a specific goal. If you take into account that the word spire means breath, and breath and spirit were originally considered to be the same thing, I'm looking at you, mask holes. You can also look at conspire as meaning together in spirit. The modern connotation of the word conspiracy is to work together or breathe together in secret to commit a crime. To theorize about a conspiracy in our current times is to do the work that any good detective or journalist should be doing, conspiring to solve the mysteries of history as well as the criminal conspiracies. Conspiracy theorizing. I don't have a penny for your thoughts. I have a pair of dimes for your paradigms. What is a paradigm? The first definition is example, pattern, especially an outstandingly clear or typical example. The second definition is a grammatical term, conjugation. It's a way that you break down a word into its different forms. And the third definition is the one that we're going to work with. A paradigm is a philosophical or theoretical framework of any kind. When I saw this definition, I thought, what does a pattern have to do with a theoretical framework? The theoretical framework is developed through pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is directly related to your imagination, inspiration, and intuition. If you are thoroughly indoctrinated and you trust the indoctrinators, aka authority, aka the experts, your pattern recognition ability can be hijacked and your paradigm can be altered from objective reality or the truth of what has actually occurred in the world, and you can become controlled by social engineers. Your pattern recognition ability has been damaged and deactivated, and thus the imagination, inspiration, and intuition is destroyed. What is your theoretical framework of life? What is your philosophy about nature, spirit, humanity, and the universe? There are two basic paradigms for how people currently look at the world. Both are conspiracy theories. Everyone is a conspiracy theorist. Everyone is a conspiracy theorist. How can you live in a world full of human beings, free to conspire to create their realities and not see all of these conspiracies? Collective consciousness theorists and corporate coincidence theorists. So which category do you fall in? Are you a collective consciousness theorist or are you a corporate coincidence theorist? Let's look at the distinction between the two paradigms of conspiracy theorists. Collective consciousness theorists. I would consider myself a collective consciousness theorist. We are the ones who in popular culture today are labeled in a derogatory way as conspiracy theorists. As collective consciousness theorists, we always strive to remain open-minded by knowing that we are limited as to what we can actually know. Know that you don't know, yet always be striving to learn more. You have to strike a balance between these two impulses. Quote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it," unquote. This quote is attributed to Aristotle. You need eclectic, diverse sources of knowledge, and then you form your decision based off, building your grammar and exploring all these diverse sources. Most of what we know is based on trust in someone else's knowledge, an appeal to illegitimate authority. We should always keep that in mind. Have a healthy skepticism. Ideally, we strive to be willing to say we are wrong when new evidence is discovered that enhances or changes the understanding of what has occurred. We understand that there is a group of humans with access to ancient knowledge that is very important for human evolution and development as a species and as a form of consciousness. We know that this group hides knowledge from the masses in order to control us. But why? For what purpose? Corporate coincidence theorists. As corporate coincidence theorists, you reject open-mindedness by believing that you can trust this ruling class to be honest with the public about current events. You trust the experts. You limit your sources of knowledge. You attempt to abdicate your responsibility to learn the truth about what has occurred here on Earth to this illegitimate authority. You reject opposing views to the point that you won't even take the time to listen to them or to research them because they don't fit the official government narrative. You may even go as far as to label them as dangerous misinformation. And this, of course, is leading to censorship. You downplay the power, organization, ability, and motivation of the ruling class to manipulate the masses to whatever ends they desire. You ignore the history of these people and groups and what they truly know, believe in, and practice. Let's talk about this third group of humans who sit outside of the paradigms of collective consciousness and corporate coincidence. The corporate sorcerers. This group of humans, the ruling class, who I call the corporate sorcerers, control and propagate the official government narrative of current events with the government, entertainment, and mainstream media apparatus, as well as the internet and social media. Clearly, they want to control us, but why? Asks the consciousness theorist. Official government narrative. The official government narrative is the paradigm, past and present, that the ruling class tells the public through their bought and paid for politicians and media outlets. The official government narrative is usually simple and always attempts to write off possible connections to a conspiracy as coincidence. The official government narrative is the one that corporate coincidence theorists believe in and propagate. The alternative collective narrative. The alternative collective narrative is the paradigm that the public tells from person to person and through alternative media and the internet. The alternative collective narrative is usually more complex and always willing to consider possible connections as causal. The alternative collective narrative is the one that consciousness theorists believe in and propagate. Both narratives are conspiracy theories based on the modern definition of the term, as they are both ways to explain world conspiratorial crimes and events. They rarely ever involve just a lone gunman, although the official government narrative tries their best to paint them as such. This is a quote from Gary Allen in his book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Those who believe that major world events result from planning are laughed at for believing in the conspiracy theory of history. Of course, no one in this modern day and age really believes in the conspiracy theory of history, except those who have taken the time to study the subject. When you think about it, there are really only two theories of history. Either things happen by accident, neither planned nor caused by anybody, or they happen because they are planned and somebody causes them to happen. In reality, it is the accidental theory of history preached in the unhallowed halls of ivy, which should be ridiculed. Otherwise, why does every recent administration make the same mistakes as the previous ones? Why do they repeat the errors of the past, which produce inflation, depressions, and war? Why does our State Department stumble from one communist aiding blunder to another? If you believe it is all an accident or the result of mysterious and unexplainable tides of history, you will be regarded as an, quote, intellectual, unquote, who understands that we live in a complex world. If you believe that something like 32,496 consecutive coincidences over the past 40 years stretches the law of averages a bit, you are a kook. 9/11. So I remember when I became aware of 9/11, I was in college. I got a phone call in the morning from my sister. She said a plane had hit the World Trade Center. I went downstairs, started watching it, and quickly got put under a trance. It only took 19 hijackers to take out the greatest military in world history. They found a passport in the rubble of the World Trade Center, a passport of one of the hijackers. And of course, Building 7 falls down at 5 o'clock in the evening the same day, and they say that the cause is from office fires, even though no other building has ever collapsed like that from an office fire or a complete fire of the building. Now, this is a good example of how both narratives are conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theorists, consciousness theorists, we run with the story of Building 7 and all of the evidence that shows that, obviously these buildings shouldn't have collapsed. Honestly, when I first heard what was going on, I didn't realize all of the evidence that was right in front of us. It probably wasn't about till 2 years later that I believe I think I saw the movie Loose Change. I could be wrong on the timeline, but I saw a movie that showed the towers collapsing, and suddenly I looked at it with new eyes and realized, wow, these buildings shouldn't have fallen like that. If anything, the top of the building should have tumbled off if there was that much damage from a plane. But again, these are both conspiracy theories. Whether you are a coincidence theorist that believes the official government narrative that it was 19 hijackers who were training in caves in Afghanistan and led by Osama bin Laden, then that is a conspiracy, right? That's not one man working together. That is a conspiracy. So they are believing in a conspiracy too. At this time, I also had the realization about the Bush administration, and this is kind of a funny realization, but the reality that their names were Bush, Dick, and Colin. And I know it sounds kind of crazy and people will think, oh, that's just a coincidence, but my mind definitely started working at that time as to, is this scripted? Did someone make this up? Or if this is a coincidence, then apparently God has a very good sense of humor because, well, not a very good sense of humor. I guess he has like a dirty mind, right? Shortly after that time, 2003, around that same time, I was given the book by a friend by David Icke called "And the Truth Shall Set You Free." And when I received this book, there was a lot of synchronistic things that happened. The cover of the book is a man floating over the earth. I had a experience of having a vision like that of myself above the earth, looking down on the earth, and it had happened shortly prior to that. And so when he gave me the book, it stood out to me like, whoa, that's just like the vision that I had. And of course I read the book, and it's an excellent book, an excellent historical record of more details of historical events than you ever get through the education system or through the media. I got this from a website online to explain an important aspect that David Icke introduced me to, which is the Hegelian dialectic, which David Icke calls problem, reaction, solution. The problem, reaction, solution paradigm. 1, the government creates or exploits a problem, blaming it on others. False flag. 2, the people react by asking the government for help, willing to give up their rights. 3, the government offers the solution that was planned long before the crisis. So again, this was the Hegelian dialectic. Hegel thought that the way to get to knowledge was through thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Disinformation, psyops, propaganda, false flags. I'm going to read a few quotes from this book by Michael Aquino, who was a Lieutenant Colonel, Psychological Operations, United States Army. This is the beginning of the book. The book is called Mind War. The concept of mind war represents a holistic and proactive approach to psychological operations, PSYOP. Rather than the traditional reactionary role to which it's been relegated, mind war focuses on emerging and anticipating problems, situations, and conditions affecting the information environment, not only to manage the perceptions of groups and individuals, but to address the conditions and situations that fuel discontent and drive instability. Targeting only the symptoms of a problem rather than addressing the underlying causes and conditions results in only a temporary and short-term solution. This short-sighted approach has proven costly, has limited effectiveness, and does not bring about nor foster long-term change. Mind war provides the capability to resolve problems before they begin. Utilizing 21st century scientifically valid, empirically based methodologies, mind war is the equivalent of a mental preemptive strike. To be effective, mind war requires a detailed analysis of an anticipated or emerging situation, focusing on the physical, information, and cognitive domains. Only this combined approach will result in a necessary understanding of the underlying issues that need to be addressed for mind war effectiveness. Mind war can be used to address not only traditional problems such as war and conflict, but also the full range of asymmetric threats: terrorism, violent extremism, drug and human trafficking, the challenges associated with globalization, migration, spread of disease, overpopulation, and the social and economic problems resulting from the physical effects of climate change, crop failure, economic volatility, and resource competition. Also, I want to define propaganda. Or first, let me define psychological operation. Psychological operations, planned operations to convey selected information and indicators to foreign audiences to influence their emotions, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. The purpose of psychological operations is to induce or reinforce foreign attitudes and behavior favorable to the originator's objectives. Now, this book obviously lays it out as if it's directed at foreign populations, but all you have to do is apply it to our own population, and you can see a lot of the things that we are dealing with. There's 3 shades of propaganda. Well, let me give you the definition of propaganda first. Propaganda: any form of communication in support of national objectives designed to influence the opinions, emotions, attitudes, or behavior of any group in order to benefit the sponsor, either directly or indirectly. And the 3 shades he has are: white propaganda is propaganda in which the source is openly and accurately stated. Gray propaganda is propaganda in which no source is stated. And black propaganda is propaganda in which the source is deliberately and explicitly misrepresented. The word government means mind control. So everything the government does is a psychological operation. Government is the noun, psyop is the verb. Bill Cooper, behold a pale horse. Bill Cooper talked about how he was in the Navy, and then he got put into naval intelligence. And he realized, as he was getting all this information across his desk about UFOs, he realized that a lot of it was disinformation or misinformation, purposeful disinformation to make apparently him think and other people think that there were UFO events and that the government didn't know what they were. And he came to the conclusion that they were lying about this to set up the public for a fake alien invasion. From his book, quote, "On the day that I learned that the Office of Naval Intelligence had participated in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and that it was the Secret Service agent driving the limo that had shot Kennedy in the head, I went AWOL with no intention of ever returning. My good friend Bob Swan is the one who talked me into going back. Later, on June 1st, 1972, the eve of my wedding, I told Bob everything that I knew about the UFOs, Kennedy's assassination, the Navy, the secret government, the coming ice age, alternatives 1, 2, and 3, Project Galileo, and the plan for the New World Order. I believe it was all true then, and I believe it is all true now. I must warn you, however, that I have found evidence that the secret societies were planning as far back as 1917 to invent an artificial threat from outer space in order to bring humanity together in a one world government, which they call the New World Order. I am still searching for the truth. I firmly believe that this book is closer to that truth than anything ever previously written." Unquote. So this throws into the mix now the idea that the information that the government is putting out is actually disinformation, and even to their agents, as Bill Cooper had a Q clearance, which was apparently one of the highest ranks in naval intelligence and in intelligence in general. If you want to look up more about the fake alien invasion, it's allegedly called Project Bluebeam, where they can beam images into the sky and make us think that we're seeing things that aren't really there. When Bill Cooper came to this conclusion, he then began his focus instead on UFOs and started looking at the practices of the people in charge and the secret societies. And what he found is that they were corporate sorcerers. They were the dark occult rulers of the earth. They practiced magic and chaos sorcery. And that is when he began uncovering a lot of information on that. Government gives us global problems, so we will seek global solutions. So these problems like climate change and corona and a nuclear reactor breaking down and an oil spill, these are all ways that government creates chaos and fear in the public and then pulls us back into government, because we can't solve, I can't solve Fukushima from my home in California. So of course I'm going to need government to do it. What I've come to realize, and what I'm here to tell many of you, is that we need to be alert and aware that most of the conspiracies that we are being exposed to are also part of the same process. It's also being given to us by government through their media and for the purpose of keeping us distracted and going down rabbit holes. Government plus education plus media equals the suppression of the imagination, inspiration, and intuition. Education has told us that every problem is solved, to trust the experts, regurgitate facts, and it is there to dumb us down. We are not taught how to think. News is short for newspeak, as coined by George Orwell. It puts us into a constant state of fear, and then it programs us with the many agendas that oppose natural law, aka our connection to the natural world. This also dumbs us down. Hollywood has cast a spell. Disney made magic a fantasy. George Lucas has a company called Industrial Light and Magic. Stanley Kubrick worked with the CIA to fake the moon landing. To learn more about this, I recommend the documentary Room 237, the work by Jay Widener. But ultimately, if you really look into NASA in a deep way, you will find that everything that they do is fake. The moon landing was fake. You can find films of them standing in front of green screens. You can find films of them filming in water tanks. This is not just NASA. This is also the Russian space agencies at the time. The Cold War was, allegedly, us fighting the Russians to build bigger nuclear bombs. But yes, they work together. The countries work together. I hope people are starting to realize this now. This is coming, it's becoming revealed as we are in the apocalypse and everything is being revealed. 2001 Space Odyssey comes out in 1968 and the moon landing supposedly happens a year later in 1969. There's evidence of, Kubrick working with the CIA. I can go on and on about that. The point is, it's fake. They sent our imagination, inspiration, and intuition, AKA our magical life force, out to the stars, instead of centered in our pineal gland and our heart and our gut, in our bones. They externalized our life force and our power, distracting us from looking internally and discovering our own magic powers. I'd like to recommend you watch the movie Wag the Dog. I recently saw this as a participant on an episode of a new series called Conspiracy Cinema. It's a great movie, And you see right here in big red, spoiler alert, right? So the movie is about how they fake a war and they bring in De Niro, who is a expert. He's a cleaner upper, right, of problems, and they are creating this propaganda to cover up a scandal that the president is involved in. And why do they need to cover up the scandal? Because there's an election coming and they need to get everybody to vote. Now, I started thinking as I'm watching the movie, my assumption as a skeptical consciousness theorist, conspiracy theorist, is that, they can rig elections. So why would they put so much effort into getting us to vote? Ironically, there's a scene in the movie where the producers of this war, they joke about how they don't vote. They've never voted. I found that very interesting. Of course, it's a movie, but there is a lot of truth in jest, as they say. Why are they so focused on getting us to vote? It's because voting is consent. They are extracting our consent and our life force, and we are delegating our responsibility to the corporate sorcerers. They need our life force. They need our attention. I started thinking, as I'm watching the movie now, they're faking the war to cover up the scandal. What if they also eventually need to fake the scandal? Look into the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the modernization of it in 2012. From Wikipedia, quote, an unnamed Pentagon official who was concerned about the 2012 law version stated, quote, it removes the protection for Americans. It removes oversight from the people who want to put out this information. There are no checks and balances. No one knows if the information is accurate, partly accurate, or entirely false, unquote. This bill in 1948, what it said was that the US government, the State Department, could propagandize foreign countries, and that the American public had no right to view what propaganda they were exposing to the foreign countries. So it basically said that the government had the right to hide evidence from the masses. It gave the government the right to lie. Now, in 2012, when Obama signed it, he opened up some of the information, but also he basically made it to where this information can be dispersed up to the American public. Again, from Wikipedia, quote, "The monthly magazine The Atlantic echoed those concerns by pointing out to two USA Today journalists who became target of a smear and propaganda campaign after they reported that the US military, quote, information operations, unquote, program spent millions of US dollars in marketing campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq, criticized as ineffective and poorly monitored. As it turned out, Camille Chidiak, who executed the marketing campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, admitted to be a part of the smear and propaganda campaign against the USA Today reporters." So this gets modernized in 2012. People looked at it as this is the US government saying that they are allowed to propagandize the public, which, you know, clearly they've already been doing that, but maybe they're just telling us that they're doing it. My intuition tells me that the whole Trump presidency was a psyop, and that it was probably even overseen by Obama. Not that I think Obama is like the most powerful guy or anything like that, but I believe that he was in on it. Most everything that came from WikiLeaks was most likely a, quote, false conspiracy, unquote, including Trump, Pizzagate, and human trafficking, and Jeffrey Epstein. And at this time, obviously, we saw that Q hijacked the truth movement. Now, when I say that these things are most likely a false conspiracy, I don't mean necessarily that none of this stuff is happening in any way. What I'm saying is they're dispersing it on purpose to the public to either make us look crazy and unhinged. But clearly, despite all the evidence, supposed evidence that came out about Pizzagate and John Podesta and Tony Podesta and all of these individuals, nothing happened to them. You know, coincidentally, at that time, the FBI released all of these code words. You know, I mean, very ironic, you could say, convenient that they released that right at the same time as all of these WikiLeaks documents come out, emails. So there's a lot to be skeptical of there. Everyone is controlled opposition until no one is. Now, by controlled opposition, I mean it could be someone that is, you know, directly controlled to go out and disperse some information. Usually, this information will have some truth in it, and but it is meant to misguide people and misdirect people. And we always need to look at what these people are not saying, and you know what information they are leaving out. So Q is the perfect example of controlled opposition. No one knows who Q is, although a lot of people have some good theories behind that. But people followed this unnamed, you know, unsourced individual online, putting out all this information. And you know, you get Trump to say something that Q said, and then everyone believes it. You know, it's real. It's not very difficult to see how this could be manufactured. Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. What I started realizing in about, I don't know, 2018, 2019, is as it was around the time when they were talking about Obamagate, which I don't even really remember what Obamagate was, but Obamagate was this big thing. And they were saying how huge it was. But one thing I realized is, like, you know, with all the information these guys have put out, how come no one has ever mentioned anything about what happened on 9/11? And also people to consider as controlled opposition, I'm just going to say culturally, Joe Rogan. He has a lot of connections to the Esalen Institute, which had members such as Julian and Aldous Huxley, and very much focused on using psychedelics and getting the public to take psychedelics. And and then Joe Rogan, I will say also, again, you look at what they're not saying, never really done a deep dive into 9/11, of course, because he can't, right? That shows you he's controlled. If he did, he'd probably get taken, off the internet, or, whatever, or he'd be, kind of ostracized. And also, he was the #1 proponent of the fake moon landing. I mean, you could look up videos of him debating people on why it was fake and all of the evidence, and there's tons of evidence that it was fake. And all of a sudden, he changed his tune when Neil deGrasse Tyson came on his podcast and told him, well, it can't be fake because there was enough gas in the rocket to get to the moon. And where'd the gas go? That's literally what he said. And that made Joe Rogan switch his tune from being the #1 fake moon landing conspiracy theorist to, no, it's just more likely that they wouldn't have faked it. It's more likely they went there than they actually faked it. Also, Alex Jones. You could look at Alex Jones as a person that they kind of hand selected to replace Bill Cooper. And Alex Jones disseminates a lot of truth because that's how they hook you. But Alex Jones also plays a character of this crazy, unhinged conspiracy theorist to make people not take conspiracy theories seriously. And I would suggest that the book Mind War, which originally the first version of it came out in around 1980, I would suggest that InfoWars is directly related to Mind Wars. It is a preemptive strike to not only uncover people who are anti-government, but also to hijack any conspiracies that we discover that are the truth, that they don't want us to really delve deeply into, and to, again, guide us into a cul-de-sac. This quote is from Julian Assange, for all the people who think, Julian Assange is real and that, we need to free Julian Assange and he's just like a real journalist. This is a quote from Julian Assange. I'm constantly annoyed that people are distracted by false conspiracies such as 9/11, when all around we provide evidence of real conspiracies for war or mass financial fraud. And I put these pictures here because, one, why would they, when they finally arrest him, why would they, if there's a struggle going on here, why are they letting him carry this book by Gore Vidal and get this perfect photo opportunity of this book? I forget the title of this book. I should have had that, but it has something to do. It's like sending a message. Why would they let him carry it out? Why wouldn't they handcuff him and just take him out like a normal police officer would? And also, why did it take so long for the government to find or to get Julian Assange out when Pamela Anderson could go in and visit him whenever she wanted to? It's the same thing as when they couldn't find Osama bin Laden, but then he got interviewed on mainstream media like 3 different times before 9/11. But yet, the military somehow couldn't find him, right? We have to think critically about this stuff. The health freedom movement and COVID-19. In 2015, I got involved with the health freedom movement, and specifically in California, they were passing laws to take away our right to decline medical procedures. You know what I'm talking about. And I remember being at a hearing where we had probably a couple thousand people testifying against this bill. It took about 4 hours for everybody to walk up to the mic and say, I'm so-and-so, I represent such and such, and I oppose this bill. I was sitting on the steps of the Capitol and I was looking at the crowd, kind of just being an observer. And I definitely started thinking, who is controlled opposition in this movement? And clearly, some people come to mind, Del Bigtree, RFK Jr. Again, they do put out a lot of truth, but again, nothing comes of this. And what I started realizing toward the end of 2019 is that they were letting us have the debate, right? If they really wanted to censor us, they could have shut down the debate, but they never did shut down the debate. They kept letting us have it. One day you'd hear a news story that went on the side of the, the health freedom movement. The next day you'd hear a story of our rights being taken away. And this debate was building up, building up, building up until 2020 and the pandemic, which, because of my experience in the health freedom movement, I knew that this was a pandemic and that I did not trust it, and I did not trust anything the health officials said, and that this would be a push to get us all to comply with a medical procedure that many of us would not want to participate in. I also assumed that it was a way to knock the health freedom movement down a peg and to redirect our attention to this new phenomenon, this new virus. With this pandemic, I'd like to point out that everything is being revealed in real time. And I'd like to read a little paragraph about the concept of revelation of the method. The term, quote, the revelation of the method was coined by the late James Shelby Downard to explain the alchemical processing of a society by its Luciferian controllers. False flag operations, assassinations, and other hair-raising conspiracies like the interventionalist endless wars, color revolutions, decapitations, as we have seen by our very own ISIS, which actually refer to an ancient and secret astronomical deity cult, and every manner of orchestrated horror show are neatly packaged into your nightly news, programming you to accept these things as the way they are. It is often said that the controllers need to inform us of their intentions before acting them out. Through predictive programming, such as the numerous scenes in so many movies where clocks displayed the numbers 9/11, and in the films Escape from New York, which even had a scene where Air Force One crashed into a building adjacent to the World Trade Center. And then there was the cover of the rap album, which was a virtual mock-up of the televised scenes seen around the world. That rap album was from a group called The Coup. They're from Oakland, California. And that album cover was taken down. It came out a few months before 9/11. Make no mistake about it. COVID-19 represents the corporate sorcerers finally revealing themselves. This is the great apocalypse. They are telling you everything they are doing before they do it. They are telling you to trust them even though they have no answers. Everything is faulty. They have plausible deniability for anything that happens now because they've covered their bases and said every possible thing that could happen. And this shows you that everything is consent-based. They have masks because they want to keep us from breathing together or being together in spirit. They want you social distancing because 6 feet is the distance of your toroidal field. They have the Great Reset planned. And so again, this is another global issue requiring a global response. The deeper you look, you find most of history is a lie, and conspiracies are an extension of the lie. Politics and war are theater. Nuclear weapons, asteroids, climate change, pandemics, these things are very likely all psyops in themselves. How many times was the world supposed to end? Our belief and attention on these lies gives them power over us. Our victimhood keeps us focused on them. My intuition tells me that we are stronger than we imagine. And when we become inspired to truly improve, we will heal ourselves. The chains are loosely placed around the necks of these individuals in this card, the devil card. All we need to do is remove them. Shadows have been cast before us. Plato's cave. Conspiracy theorizing has prepared us to recognize the shadows on the cave wall are illusions. But now is the time to exit the cave. Don't trust any event that leads to government solutions. We have to stop expecting justice through this system. That will only lead back to more government. You can't expect them to arrest Fauci or bring anybody to justice. You can't be looking for that as a solution. It's unrealistic. We need to detach from the system. We should all unregister to vote. Actually, don't vote, actually unregister to vote. Limit your intake of the mainstream media as much as possible. And when you do partake of it, be aware always of the illusionary nature of it. Make your default position for everything you hear that thing is false. Be vigilant about verifying those things before being affected by them. We are the magician. We need to be rediscovering and remembering that we are the magician, and that is of primary importance. Rediscovering our imagination, inspiration, and intuition. How can we do this? We can do this through meditation, and I'm recommending Rudolf Steiner's books, The Outline of Esoteric Science and How to Know Higher Worlds. And you can find those at rsarchive.org and also Rudolf Steiner Archives on YouTube. Learn and teach the true truth discovery, which is the trivium. The trivium has been occulted and weaponized against us as problem, reaction, solution. The trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and they have used it against us as problem, reaction, solution. Focus on your inner self and work out from there. From your breath to your pineal, to your heart, to your physical health, to your family, to your local community of like-minded individuals, networking to create sustainability, become self-sufficient. And finally, naturalfreedomleague.com is our website. Thank you for your time. Remember to embrace the magician inside, and always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.